Hey, what's going on? This is Dylan with Dylan Talks Tone, and today we're going to talk about why or if or when you should change the pots in your guitar. If you're new to this channel, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. We have like 500 videos all about guitar tone, guitar tech, myth busting, which is what we're doing today. Because you get on all these Facebook groups and you get on forums on the internet and stuff, and you see people buy a brand new guitar, and the very first thing they want to do is rip all their pots out and replace them with something else because those small pots look cheap. They're probably robbing tone. And it's usually weirdly a size-based thing, like those tiny caps, those small pots. Like for some reason they think that stuff is robbing tone. So let's just myth bust number one. The bottom line is a pot is a pot is a pot is a pot when it comes to what it actually does. Now we're going to get into a few different aspects of this that make this totally different as we go. But all a pot is, look at this diagram, is there's a pin in the middle with a wiper on it. The outside is a ring of carbon that is a particular resistance, 250K, 500K, something like that. So if the wiper is all the way over here, for example, and it's on a volume pot, which is what it is because this is a picture that's backwards, so just bear with me. But if the volume pot wiper is all the way over here, it's very, very close to ground, and that means, or all the way to ground, and that means it's a short, that means your volume is all the way down. Boom, done. If you go all the way the other way, now you have that resistor in between there, that 500K or 250K, boom, you have all your volume that is allowed through that pot. And then that middle one is the output that goes to the output jack. Voltage divider versus variable resistor, we could get into that. That's a whole nother video. So we'll get into that some other time. If you want me to do that, put it in the comments right now and let me know. And we'll do the difference between why a volume pot works a certain way and a tone pot works a different way. Okay, so we'll do that different video. But that's the basics of it. Consumer-based pots, most consumer pots that you can buy, Bourne, CTS, Alpha, all of them, they're all going to have more or less the same, they do the same thing, they are the same thing. The pots in your $500 guitar are fine. There's a couple of factors, though, that may not be. One is the tolerance of the potentiometer might not be very good. So let's say it's a 500K pot, but then when you measure it, it's only like 410. That could actually rob tone. And we have a video about why that is, what the K of your pot makes a difference. We'll put a link to that up here too. If the pot has a bad tolerance and it doesn't measure what it's supposed to measure, that could affect your tone. Sometimes that happens. The other thing that could happen is, what if you have a guitar, you've all had these probably, where you turn the guitar volume down and it doesn't really do anything, doesn't do anything. You get it down to like 3 and boom, it like shuts off. Like there's no variableness to the volume or the tone, right? That is called the pot taper. And that can be different from brand to brand, and there are some custom ones, and some of the cheaper guitars don't have very good ones, for example. So if your guitar has that problem and you turn it all the way down, you want to do something about the taper. This is what the taper is. There are two different kinds. One is basically a linear taper, which does what you think it would do. You turn the volume down to 5, it's 50% of the volume or 50% of the tone. Makes sense. That's a linear taper pot. One that makes a little less sense and where you can kind of have some fun with the variableness of these from brand to brand is called the logarithmic pot or audio taper pot. I personally use audio taper pots in everything because I like the way they feel and I like what they do. So look at the curve on the audio taper pot. What this does is it gives it sort of a ramp. Like it puts more of it in the middle and a less away from the edges. So it makes it to where it doesn't do that thing where it like doesn't do anything, and then all of a sudden shuts off. I like an audio taper pot personally on everything, on the volume, on the tone, on everything, and that's what I use, and that's what we use on our custom build guitars. I really, really like them. Let's get into, now that we understand technically what a pot does and some of the variables, let's get into the actual construction of a pot and why you might want to change it. So here is 4 different types of pots that we see in lots of guitars, okay? So we got the baby mini pot, we've got the regular kind of pot, we got another pot that's got a hole in it, see that one with the hole in it? And then we got this other one with this other conglomeration of stuff on the bottom. So let's work through these. The mini pot is the one that we see in a lot of less expensive guitars. But that doesn't mean it's cheap. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. That pot right there, the very one in that picture, is actually going in a custom wiring harness for a very expensive guitar. I'm actually building it today. It's a quality pot. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The only thing that, and it's because of a size constraint. It's got to go in a tiny spot. That's why I'm using it. The only reason I would use a bigger one than a smaller one, it has nothing to do with tone, nothing to do with quality, but it changes the ratio and how easy it is to adjust it. Can you kind of see the logic in that? Basically, like if it's a little tiny pot and you try to move it, you move it too much and you didn't mean to move it that much. And a bigger pot, because of more or less gear ratios, it has to do with the circumference of the pot, it's easier to adjust it where you want it. So if you want to go from 7 to 7.5, it's just easier to do that. It's not as easy to do that. Now you could put a big knob on it and change the ratio with a big knob, but a lot of people don't do that, don't have the space. So for that reason, I like going with a bigger pot. It doesn't matter. What we should say before we talk about anything else is if you have a guitar and if you like how it sounds, don't change anything. Don't change anything for the sake of changing stuff. So just play the guitar, right? So make sure that if it has a problem, if it's giving you a problem, if it's doing something that you don't want it to do, put it in the comments and discuss it with your peers. But at the same time, don't get talked into doing something just to do something, right? Okay, that rant over. Let's go on to the next physical pot. So we talked about the little one, we talked about the big one. Now we've got the other one, see with the hole in it? That, if we go back to our drawing of what an actual pot is inside, there's that racetrack of carbon that goes around the outside. Around the outside, around the outside. Sorry. Hopefully I don't get copyright struck, Eminem. So this is basically called a no load pot. And what that means is it's normal, but then right as it gets to 10, that little detent, that little hole in the bottom makes it like click to 10, and there's no resistor connected right there. So you can use that on a tone pot sometimes to have it like wide open, like pretend the pot's not even in there. We have another video about does a pot make a difference when it's all the way on 10, and it does. We do this like side-by-side comparison. And so to take it completely out of the circuit, pretending you don't have a tone pot at all, that's what that does. It like clicks over to 10, cuts off the end right there. There's no resistance, boom. It's like you don't have a pot. It's like having a switch at the end of your tone pot. Don't use it as a volume pot, because if you do that, then your guitar will cut out at 10, and you don't want that, and you don't want to accidentally do that. So that's for a very specific purpose. We have a couple of videos about that. I'll link those in the pinned comment below so that you can find more information on no load pots, okay? The last one, now many of you probably already know that this is called a push-pull pot, but for those that don't know, see that stuff all on the bottom? That is a dual pull, dual throw switch, which means that you can use that for fun stuff like parallel series switching, for coil splitting, for coil tapping, for all kinds of fun stuff that you can do with the other wiring in your guitar. It doesn't have anything to do actually with what's going on in the pot. It's just an outside switch, but it makes it to where it's dual function. So you have the pot down here at the bottom, and then here you have the switch that makes it to where you can like do other functions. That's all it is. All these things, all this conclusion, if you like your guitar and you see no reason to change it, don't change it. Don't change stuff just because somebody told you you think you should, or make you think you should just by something you saw in a forum. Now, obviously, experimenting is super fun, but I think a lot of people kind of get pushed into directions and down rabbit holes for no reason whatsoever. So just keep this in mind. So little pot, big pot, no load tone pot, and push-pull. Now they do have push-push too. Little suggestion on that push-push thing. Get a really good one. If you're gonna get a push-push or a push-pull pot, spend the most money that you can afford to get the best one, because there is a mechanism in there that can break. So you just wanna make sure that you get a really good quality one and do your research on that. I like Bourne's, that's my favorite. I like Bourne's pots in general because I like the way they feel. They're not too stiff. I like the taper. I like the quality. Some people like CTS, some people like Alpha. There's a bunch of different brands. I'm a Bourne's guy. It's just my favorite, and that's what we use in our custom guitars. If you go to Dylan Talks Tone, you'll see we have like these pre-made wiring harnesses for Strats and Teles and stuff like that, Mustangs, all that kind of stuff. And we use Bourne's pots predominantly unless somebody wants something else, just because I like the quality of them and I like really how smooth they feel. They're super, super smooth. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, man, put it in the comments. This stuff is super fun to talk about. If this brings up a question for you that you did not know, or you're like, wait a minute, what about? Put it in the comments. Maybe we'll make a video about it. Super cool. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you soon.